Choice of text field. Creme de la creme. Link. Map. Creme de la creme. Link. Image. Store. Back button. Buy. Hannah Powell. Add favored button. 4.8 stars. Try now button. Details. Show stat. You can form romances or partnerships with some side characters, and they can have varied genders, male, female, and non-binary on each playthrough. How would you like that? Randomize the genders of variable side characters. Recommended for first. Checked. Pick a single gender for all variable. Choose the genders of variable side next button. Your mother. You drag your from the philosophical we must take pride in our prologue. All aboard. We must take pride in our gentle resilience through adversity. From the philosophical considerations of a Lady Francoise Renault. Your mother calls to you through the throng. Come on. Your mother calls to you through the throng. Come on, darling, you'll miss the train. You drag your trunk through a crowd of parents, noisy students, and various relatives and hangers-on. Few people but Gallatin students take this train. Most of the people your age are dressed in the Gallatin College uniforms, just as you are. The platform is pure chaos. Thick steam billows from the engine, guards bellow commands and blow piercing whistles. From the road nearby, car horns blare out. Younger siblings squeal, while students shriek and throw their arms around each other. Excuse me, someone behind you snaps, and shuts past you for the train door. I step aside, allowing them to pass. Radio button, checked, 1 of 4. I glower in their direction. Radio button, unchecked. I shove them back with a sharp elbow. I glower in their direction. I shove them back with a sharp elbow. Next, button. They stumble, but continue on their way. All you see of them is their back. They wear a Gallatin uniform, of course, and the back of their head is sleek and dark. They board the train without a second glance. Beside the door, your parents are waiting. Your father still has that gaunt, anxious look, while your mother has expertly applied her makeup to hide the tired expression that seems to stay no matter how much she sleeps. They've been that way since just after your 18th birthday. Next, button. Double vertical scroll bar, text field, click AD. Install it, magic tile, AD, click, link, vertical scroll bar, 15 page. App switcher, choice of game, close, activate, default. Choice, show stats, button. You're untouched by, it's been an eventful time. Several months ago, you were planning your debut, with nothing to worry about but your outfit and sparkling conversation. But, it's been an eventful time. Several months ago, you were planning your debut, with nothing to worry about but your outfit and sparkling conversation. But with your parents' sudden fall into disrepute, all the money set aside for the debut was handed over to Gallatin College to cover your fees. Completing a year at one of Westerland's most prestigious finishing schools could help restore the family name, or so your parents think. You're untouched by all this, your father told you. Graduating from Gallatin is an honor, and you'll make plenty of connections there who can give us a helping hand. You might even make a good marriage. In other words, your parents are depending on you to clear up their scandal. Next, button. The train whistle blows, and your mother flags down a porter for your luggage. The porter tips her hat and begins rolling it aboard. Your hands feel rather empty without it, but your father pulls you into a tight hug. I'm so sorry that things have been so difficult, he tells you. But, please do understand, enrolling at Gallatin is for your own good, and for our good, too. His voice cracks. Your mother's expression is careful and smooth, but she presses a knuckle against her cheek to hide a tear. I want to make them feel guilty about ruining my life. Radio button, checked, 1 of 4. I keep my back straight. I let myself. Next, button. AD. Click, vertical scroll bar. App switcher. Activate, default. Choice of games. Show stats, button. With a trembling voice, you say, it's going to be hard. Of course, says your mother, touching your arm. But, you add, I do understand, and I just hope I can help make up for everything that's happened. That you've done. Goes unsaid but hangs in the air. Your mother has to blink back tears, and your father looks stricken. Look, we're both so sorry, he starts to say, but the carriage doors are slamming. It's time to embark. Your father straightens the collar of your coat. Remember that you'll always be our son, he says. We're proud of you. Use he slash. I'm sure you'll do splendidly, he says. You're an excellent daughter. Use she slash her pronouns. Checked. We will be thinking, next, text field, next, button, next. I have a fair complexion, I have a light brown complexion, I have a very pale complexion, radio. Next, but, I have, next, button. And though your mother is graying, you both have hair that is naturally black, radio, brown, blonde, radio button, unchecked, 3. Checked. AD, install, magic tiles, 5e easier, 5e easier, 5e, magic tile, brown, black, red, next, button. And. Coiled, radio button, tightly curled, radio. Checked. Loosely curled, straight, next, button. All aboard, shouts a guard from the end of the platform. I give my parents a hug, radio button, checked, 1 of 5. I clasp my parents' hands, radio button. I say a brief farewell, radio button. I rush onto the train. This is next, but I rush onto the train. This is so exciting. Radio button. Uncheck. Next button. A quick hug. You smell your father's familiar cinnamon-scented cologne, feel the scratch of your mother's favorite cardigan. And then you step aboard. In the carriage, students are pushing, waving, and yelling. You squeeze past the porters who are strapping down the luggage, and find yourself an empty compartment in which to settle while watching the sea of uniforms. You'll be wearing the Gallatin colors nearly every day for the coming college year. In a masculine way, radio button. Checked. In a feminine way, neither masculine. In a feminine way, neither masculine nor feminine. Check. Next button. Your ivory shirt gives you a clean-cut silhouette. Current fashion leans towards intricate layers of fabric. You can't change your uniform much. You carefully hang your coat and blazer on a hook, making sure they don't crease, and smooth your trousers. Through the window, your parents are waving, but you can hardly see them now amidst the crowd. The door swings button. Text. The door swings button. A pale, red-haired student your age with a worried expression props open the door with an elbow while talking to a pair of harried-looking middle-aged women. One of the women is carrying a baby. A small boy is tugging at the other woman's trousers, begging her to pick him up. From their conversation, the women are the student's parents. I'm fine, says the uniformed student. Honestly, I just need to find somewhere to sit, and, look, here's somewhere. Goodbye. All right, I promise. Her tone is rather frantic. Both women give her a hug, and the little boy starts to wail. The student gives a despairing sigh. Go on, mama, I'll be fine, she says. After a final family hug, the group pushes past you to disembark. The student runs a hand over her severely parted auburn hair and sighs. This is right, isn't it? She says to you. We're not. Her accent is markedly different. This is right, isn't it? She says to you. We're not meant to be assigned compartments. I'm new this year. Don't want to make a mistake. The student carries on talking. I greet her with a warm smile. Radio button. I give her a hearty handshake. Radio button. My smile is polite but cool. Radio button. I give her a hearty handshake. I nod brusquely. Next button. Freddie shakes your hand enthusiastically, then starts unpacking books from a battered leather satchel, not asking your name. She tucks an errant strand of hair behind her ear. The summer reading was so interesting, she says. She touches the thickest book, B. Philosophical Consideration, and the key text of Gallatin College. Did you since Lady Reynolds is the head teacher, it's not. I shrug. I didn't bother doing the reading, but I didn't exact. Next button. Text. Next button. Your parents did buy it for you, but it was far too dense to bother with. You'll pick it all up once you arrive, you're sure. I just hope that we get to learn more about the college history, Freddie is saying. Weighed down with a hockey stick, a lacrosse stick, and a trunk on wheels, a student is running down the platform towards your door, but a guard is already hauling it closed. A whistle blows. The student yells, but the guard does not hear her. I shout to the guard to open the door. I dash to the door to stop it. I pretend not to have noticed the scene. Radio button. Next button. Next. Freddie looks uncertain, her gaze darting between you and the platform, but before she can intervene, the student pelts for the door and stumbles on board in the nick of time. She crashes into your compartment along with all her belongings. Thanks for the help, says the newcomer sarcastically. You wouldn't believe how bad the trains were. She flings herself down and puts her feet on the seat with a sigh. I'm sorry, Gonzalez, by the way, she says. New this year. Call me Gonzalez, everyone does. Gonzalez's complexion is darker than Freddie's or I rather envy her confidence. Radio button. Checked. One of This girl could be a rival. Radio button. Unchecked. No matter. Why didn't she bother tuning in up before the journey? Radio button. Next button. Why didn't she bother tuning in up before the journey? Why didn't Next button. With a screech of metal on metal, the train rumbles into motion. Clouds of steam roll past, and Freddie snaps the window closed before returning to sit with her book on her lap. The movement of the train dislodges Gonzalez's lacrosse stick, and Gonzalez leaps up with an exclamation to shove it onto the shelf above you. Awful thing, she says cheerfully. I'm new, too, Freddie volunteers. Final year. It's so strange to be going away from home. Gonzalez waves an airy hand. Oh, well, I was at Ginnard International before I turned 18, she says, naming a staggeringly expensive boarding school on the southern edge of Westerland. Freddie has Rochat's Academy, a boarding school focusing on the arts. Radio button. Checked. 1 of 4. Harrovian School, a prestigious and academic. Halsfield School, a highly religious. Olmsted Valley School, a rural, isolated boarding school. Radio button. Next button. Halsfield School, a highly religious day school. Halsfield. Next. Text. 4. Cash tornado. Next button. Halsfield School feels so long ago now, even though you only graduated 6 months ago, your friends there have fallen out of touch. Compared to what you've read of Gallatin, Halsfield is far more strict. Of course, at Gallatin one must be on one's best behavior, but there would be days at Halsfields where you had to sit in silent contemplation for hours at a time, and that was even before getting into the punishments. Hopefully you will have more freedom at Gallatin College, you'll be away from the eagle eyes of your parents, at least. Freddie looks as though this is the first time that homesickness has occurred to her. I went to, Weybourne Secondary, she says. A beat. You've never heard of the place, you know of Weybourne, though. It's a downmarket part of Fenberg, the capital of Westerland. There would certainly be no boarding schools there. Probably no private schools at all. Oh, Gonzalez says, too brightly. So you're a scholarship student? Freddie scowls, and folds her arms. Well, yeah, she growls, but I got it on merit. Unlike you. Is the undertone, and I try to smooth things over, to relax the atmosphere. Radio button. I change the subject subtly, ask, next, button. From your satchel, you unearth a wax paper bag of still warm apple rock cakes your parents bought you for the journey. Want one? Freddie frowns a little, looking as though she'd have preferred you to speak up to support her, but she takes one. Gonzalez eagerly does the same, and the compartment is filled not with grumbling, but instead with quiet munching and the delicious smell of apple and cinnamon. Then the moment of camaraderie fades, and silence stretches out. Gonzalez leans forward on her elbows. What's your name, anyway? You answer. Choose from traditionally feminine given. Choose from traditionally masculine. Custom given name. Radio button. Unchecked. 404. Checked. Next button. Enter your given name. Text field. Double tap to text field is edited. Insertion point at end. Cap T. Tag. Cap H. Hotel. Cap L. Lima. Cap L. Cap L. T. R. T. Y. U. I. O. P. A. L. A. P. O. I. I. F. F. C. X. Z. Sh. L. L. K. J. H. G. F. D. S. A. A. P. O. I. U. Y. T. R. E. W. Q. Letters. For Layla. Original text. Is. Original text. Done. Button. Next. Preview. Next. Button. Next. Text field. Next. Something about Layla. Something about Layla. Radio button. Checked. Something. Next. Button. And your surname? Duval. Radio button. Monroe. Radio button. Carali. Radio button. Graythorne. Radio button. Navarro. Radio button. Moretti. Radio button. Van Rossum. Radio. Broker. Radio button. Santiago. Radio button. Adeyemi. Radio button. Custom surname. Radio button. Unchecked. 11 of 11. Checked. Next. Button. Enter your surname. Enter your text field. Double tap insertion point at end. Cap T. Cap Y. Cap R. Cap X. Cap C. Cap V. Cap B. Brav. Cap B. Cap B. F. D. S. A. P. O. I. U. Y. T. R. R. T. Y. U. I. O. 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 R. G. V. C. X. Z. Sh. L. K. K. J. H. G. F. D. S. S. Space. Go. Go. Next. Button. Nice to meet you, Layla, Gonzalez says. Wasn't the entrance essay horrible? I wrote about the Gallatin lacrosse team, the Swans, and how I want to help it succeed. Obviously Lady Reynolds liked it, but I almost fell asleep writing it. Your entrance essay must have been one of the latest ones to arrive. One afternoon, your parents sat you down to write 4 sides of paper about a time when you achieved something great before the evening post went out. At first, your mind went blank, but then you settled on rescuing a stranger who had fallen in a canal. Tag spirit as a strong skill. Radio button. Check. Getting the highest exam results at my school. Unearthing a con artist amongst my parents' friends. Winning a dressage competition. Tag point. Being cast as the lead in the school play. Next. Button. Being cast as the lead in the school play. Being cast as the lead in the school. Winning a dressage competition. Winning a dressage competition. Unearthing a con artist amongst my parents' friends. Unearthing a con artist. Getting the highest exam results at my school. Getting the high. Win. Being cast. Next. Text field. Next. Button. Next. Fell for a prank the day after. Had notoriously bad. Tripped over Wix. Of course, you worked hard to achieve at Hals. Show stats. But you worked hard to achieve at Halsfield School and receive the Excellence in Study Cup as a result. Whatever happens afterwards, your name will be engraved on that cup forever. Of course, you didn't mention in your essay that you tripped over when accepting the trophy. Tag poise as a weak skill. Radio button. Checked. One of. Fell asleep during the exams. Next. Button. You remember in excruciating detail. A collective gasp, and then stifled laughter when you picked yourself up. In front of the whole school. Mortifying. You tell Gonzalez all about your accomplishment, minus the embarrassing part, and she hangs onto your every word. So did you, she starts to say. The door slams. Button. A scowling student stands in the doorway, flanked by a couple of friends. When you've finished bragging, says the student, maybe you should tell them about what your parents did, and see if they still think you're so great. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, after all. You recognize her voice, she's the one, Freddie and Gonzalez give. You recognize her voice, she's the one who pushed you earlier. Freddie and Gonzalez give you confused, nervous looks. Blaze Merkel, says the newcomer as though that explains everything. Go on, Layla Brooks. Tell them all about your family. Blaze's eyes are dark and challenging. She has you, quite literally, backed into a corner. They embezzled money from their business. They gambled away nearly all their fortune, and they backed a corrupt candidate for prime minister, and, worse, they embezzled money from their business. It gave me opportunities, but they embezzled, they backed a corrupt, next, button. You never had much idea of what your parents did in their business, something to do with stocks and shares and investments, but 6 months ago, they started having very serious conversations with smartly dressed visitors, and staying up all night excavating their paperwork. One day, you came home to find the house crawling with investigators in suits. Your parents tearfully assured you that they did it for you, to give you the best start in life. Maybe that's true, or maybe they were simply rationalizing. Either way, they sold the house, their former friends melted away, and the 3 of you moved to a small rented apartment in a less than desirable district of Fenberg. The money for the Gallatin college fees came from a trust set up by your great-grandmother, and could not be touched by the financiers. I explained quickly, saying that none of it was my fault. Radio button. Checked. One of. I talk about it with genuine distress. Radio button. My parents' actions were inexcusable. I completely reject what they did. Checked. I defend. Next. Button. Freddie looked relieved. Gonzalez looks uncertain. Blaze's lip curls. However you try to spin it, she says, they hurt people. My parents invested in Brooks shares, and lost it all. If my aunts hadn't been around to help us, we'd have been destitute. She glares at you. And, anyway, this is my compartment. I ride here every time we go to Gallatin, everyone knows that. I can tell Blaze is trouble. I gather my things and go. Radio button, checked, 1 of 4. I remain sitting. Blaze has no right to order me around. Radio button, I leave, making Blaze look bad in the I meet Blaze's eye coolly and ask her, next, button. Meeting Blaze's angry gaze, you stand your ground. After a long moment, Blaze turns on her heel and stomps out. Silence for a moment, and then Freddy gives a nervous laugh and cracks open her book again. Even on the train seat, Gonzalez manages to fall asleep. The train rumbles on, button. The landscape shifts from rolling hills to mountains, and the bright sunshine fades to stormy clouds. As the hours roll onward, the excitement of the train subsides, and most students are talking more quietly. The motion of the train is hypnotic, and even with your head leaning against the bumpy window, your eyes drift closed. The next thing you know, whistles are blowing and guards are shouting once more. All change for Gallatin, button. You yawn and stretch. Freddy and Gonzalez have gone, and you can see the town of Gallatin out of the window. Beyond the scattering of town buildings loom the jagged Gallatin Mountains, smoky blue in the distance. Despite the heavy clouds, the town has a chocolate box prettiness that is entirely different to where you grew up. You grew up in the middle of Fenberg, radio button. The bucolic countryside, radio button. The middle of Fenberg, radio. A small city close to, next, button. There was always so much going on in Fenberg, theater shows, concerts, fireworks displays. Never a dull moment, if you had the money, which your parents haven't for some time. The new apartment is far less exciting. Students scramble off the train in a rush, running for the tiny station entrance. With a sinking feeling, you realize the mountain road will be too narrow for cars, and the residents here seem to rely more on horses and carriages than on anything more modern. You are caught in a bottleneck, and by the time you free yourself, only one carriage remains. Gonzalez is talking to the train conductor anxiously, and does not seem to have noticed. At the last carriage, which looks barely large enough for 2 people, Blaze is handing over a coin to the driver. Layla. Freddy trots up to you, looking worried. They never said we'd have to bring money. I thought someone was coming to meet us. According to your invitation letter, someone was. Perhaps there's been a mistake? Above you, thunder rumbles. I wait for the college carriage to arrive as promised, and encourage Freddy and Gonzalez to do the same. Radio button, checked, 1 of 4. I tell Freddy and Gonzalez to join Blaze in the carriage. I wait for the college carriage to arrive. I tell Freddy and Gonzalez to join Blaze in the carriage. I'll wait alone. Radio button. I ready my luggage and start walking. Freddy and Gonzalez can come. Checked. I run. Next, button. Freddy looks nervous about dragging the heavy trunk, but follows her lead. Gonzalez walks with a jaunty, effortless stride. There's a quality to the air here that you hadn't put your finger on, but now that you have more time to think, you have it. It tastes clean, more so even than the lowlands where you're away from city smoke. Even the heavy storm clouds feel fresh. As you trudge up the mountain, your ascent grows sharper and the road narrows. Beside the road, bright blue gentian flowers form a carpet of color, stretching far into the distance. But the idyll does not last long. Lightning flashes, button. Text field, lightning flashes, but the lightning is so bright that it leaves an imprint on your eyelids. Thunder rolls almost immediately, and rain pelts down. You are soon soaked through, and the wind is rising, sending a wet chill down to your bones. Freddy's teeth chatter. Layla, do you think we should go back? I don't think this is such a good idea. Don't be a spoilsport. Gonzalez cries. Her black hair whips wildly, and she laughs. Without waiting for an answer, she races ahead through the rain. That's so stupid, Freddy yells, but the wind carries her voice away. I look for shelter nearby, radio button, checked, 1 of 5. Check, I run after Gonzalez. I try to buoy up Freddy's spirits. I yell at Gonzalez to get over herself and be sent. Next, button. You narrow your eyes and scan through the dark. If you strain, you can see a darker patch of shadow in the darkness. When you hasten there, it turns out to be a tiny ranger's hut. Freddy stomps beside you, muttering about Gonzalez's idiocy. After a few minutes, Gonzalez has clearly come to her senses and follows you inside. There's no food, but at least it's out of the wind, and you find matches and candles in a high cupboard. Horses' hooves, button. Outside, horses approach and a carriage pauses. The door slams open, and a figure bundled in a greatcoat and scarf stands there, dripping and breathing hard. I bristle. He shouldn't have been so late. Radio button, unchecked. 2. I apologize quietly. Radio button, check. What were you thinking? He snaps as you follow him toward the carriage. You could have been killed out here, and no one would have known. I apologize quietly. Radio button. I bristle. He shouldn't have been so late. Radio button. I ignore. Next, button. You should have made a telephone call to the station, or something, you say crossly. Carson sighs and does not reply. The carriage is warm and roomy. With a sharp command to the horses, Carson starts to drive. Compared to the rest of today's trip, the journey takes no time at all. You are still freezing, but your hands are beginning to thaw out. Carson thumps the roof. We're here. Gallatin College awaits, button. In the storm, you cannot see much of the college, but you have an impression of a long gravel drive and a tall stone archway. Carson herds you into a dark, grassy quadrangle lined with electric lamps. The blurring of light through the rain gives everything a sickly orange cast. Shallow stone steps lead up to arching wooden doors, flung open, with heavy wrought iron handles larger than your hand. A heavy coat of arms hangs above the door depicting a swan and a scroll, and beneath is a carved inscription. Truth is found in gentility. Inside the entrance hall, it is blessedly warm. A fire roars in the marble fireplace, and a wide staircase winds upstairs to a backdrop of stained glass windows. Your clothes and shoes drip onto the intricate parquet floor. A tall, pale, neatly dressed student stands beside another set of doors, through which you can hear a muffled voice. They have an expectant expression, with a touch of a frown. Thank you, Carson, says the student. Of course, MX. Hartman, Carson says, ducking his head. Now that you're in the light and his hood is down, it's clear that he is the same age as you, around 18. Freddie Crawford, isn't it? They say. The others obediently troop in, leaving you with Hartman. Next button. Hartman is immaculately turned out, and their mousy hair is secured in a short ponytail. I'm P.I. Hartman, the head prefect. Them knowing about your situation is less than comfortable, but you scan the piece of paper they hand to you. It's simple enough. All you need is to let the teachers know what you'd like them to call you. You scribble on the form. Miss Brooks, radio button. Ms. Brooks. Master Brooks, Mr. Brooks, MX. Just Layla is fine, radio button, unchecked. Checked. Just Brooks is fine, next button. Thank you, Hartman says, and leads you through the doors. Don't worry about your clothes, they murmur. You'll dry out. You're in a vast auditorium whose high Thank you, Hartman says, and leads you through the doors. Don't worry about your clothes, they murmur. You'll dry out in the warm. The important thing is that you'll hear the address. You're in a vast auditorium whose high buttresses soar overhead. Uniformed Gallatin College students sit upon wooden benches with a faintly religious look. Hartman ushers you to a bench close to the back, and perches on the seat next to you, watching the stage with a studiously attentive expression. On this stage, beneath another swan-bedecked coat of arms, stands Lady Reynolds, whose photograph graces the Gallatin prospectus. She's a dark-skinned woman in her late middle age, and wears a sensible, but expensive, dress the color of mustard, along with a sable collar. Beside her sits a pale, grave-looking man in his 30s, a brown woman wearing a silk shirt and wide-leg trousers with glamorously red lipstick, and a tan man barely older than you who looks as though he's been caught in headlights. Exemplifies excellence, Lady Reynolds finishes. The dark student on your other side hoops sarcastically. Shut up, Max, Hartman hisses over your head. Max's grin is sharp, and he theatrically rolls his eyes. His tightly curled black hair is braided against his scalp. What? A couple of younger students giggle. I hush Max quietly. That's no way to behave. Radio button, checked, 1 of 4. I pretend not to notice what's happening. Radio button. I watch the other students to see how they react. Radio button. I join in with Max's mockery. Radio button. I pretend not to notice what's happening. Radio button, unchecked, 2. Check. Next button. It's a challenge, considering you're stuck between the two major players in the situation, but you put on an attentive look and stop yourself intervening. I love this college, Max says in a grandiose tone that rings across the hall. I love it with every fiber of my being. Max, I swear. Yes, I know, you'd swear allegiance with me, Max says. If I could marry the college, Lady Reynolds quells Max with a thunderous look, and he subsides. Thank you for your attention, Lady Reynolds says. We will convene for dinner. The banquet hall, button. You've seen the Gallatin College banquet hall in grainy photographs, but little could prepare you for this spectacle. 3 crystal chandeliers hang from the high ceiling, sparkling with light. Portraits of previous head teachers line the walls, along with a bronze plaque stretching nearly the height of the room listing the prefects of years gone by. The earliest date is several hundred years ago. Long tables and benches sit beneath the chandeliers. The tables have been elaborately set with silverware and decoratively folded napkins. Bottles of wine stand on the older students' tables, along with crystal glasses. For a moment, you are disoriented. Your fellow students file past you, and you realize that you'll need to take your seat quickly before they're taken. Blaze is holding court at a full table. There would be no room to join her even if you wanted to. Hartman has led Freddie to a table of prefects, all of whom are talking animatedly. Gonzalez has followed Max to another table, where Max is met with backslapping and ragged cheering. Lady Reynolds gives Max a freezing look, but Max blithely ignores her. I sit at the table with the prefects, radio button, checked, 1 of 3. I sit alone, radio, next, button, I sit alone. I sit alone, next, button. Next. I drink water instead of the wine, radio button, unchecked. I drink water instead of the wine. I indulge myself, radio button. I drink water instead of the wine, next, button. I drink water instead of the wine. Next, text, next, button. The servants here are very conscientious. After you state your preference only once, they no longer bother you with the wine bottles, and bring deliciously cool ice water from a crystal decanter. During the soup course, the younger male teacher strides from the teacher's table to tell off Max's table for throwing coins in each other's cups. They start again as soon as his back is turned. As he passes you, he pauses. Layla, isn't it? He says. I'm Mr. Blanchard, the athletics teacher here. Are you all right? I know it's a little overwhelming. He must be in his 20s, only a few years older than you. His wavy brown hair has no gray to be seen, but his suit is distinctly middle-aged. Lie, I'm upset about Blaze's behavior, radio button, check. I'm not feeling all that cheerful, but I put on a brave face, radio button, uncheck. I like sitting alone, and I tell him so, radio button. I'm not feeling all that cheerful. Checked. Truth, I'm worried about Blaze's behavior, next, button. You give him a polite smile. I just wanted a little time to myself, you say. Mr. Blanchard looks relieved. Ah, that's the spirit, he says. I remember when I first arrived here as a student, I was as homesick as anything. The noise from the coin-throwing table rises. With a sigh, he goes to tell them off once more. You're talking to your dessert. It's poached pears with maple syrup drizzled on top, then frozen to form a delicate lattice. Tiny flakes of gold leaf have been sprinkled over the concoction. Soon, Lady Reynolds stands to announce the end of dinner. Tomorrow, the term begins in earnest, she says. Remember that in this time, you shall be setting the stage for your future achievements. Do not waste it. The dormitory awaits, button. With scuffling and chattering, the students file out of the banquet hall. Hartman stands at the doorway. New final year students. Clemency Building is this way, they call. Though the rain has eased, the wind is still raging as you pick your way across the quadrangle path. You are the first to arrive. The Clemency Building, where your dorm is situated, is a Halkin brick edifice with a sapphire-colored door. Past a deserted post room, you climb a set of spiral stairs. There's a cozily decorated common room filled with plush couches and a flickering fire, and more stairs up. By the time you reach the dorm, you're growing dizzy. It's a wide room lined with 7 neat beds with plain coverlets. Beside each bed is a narrow closet for your clothes and belongings. You spot your trunk sitting at the foot of the bed next to the window. A scuffle of movement beneath one of the beds. A student emerges, blinking. They shake back their curtains of blonde hair. Behind it is a round, light brown face. Oh, they say. I didn't think dinner would be done yet. Do you want anything extra to eat? They indicate a box of fruit and sandwiches sitting on the bed. I'm full from earlier, so I decline. Radio button, checked, 1 of 3. I eat heartily, next, button. I'll go along with this for the ride. What's the worst that can happen? Radio button, I'll go along with it. I'm skeptical about Delacroix's state. Delacroix is either delusional or a prankster. I turn down their offer. Their expression is entirely serious. They dust off their long fingers with a napkin. I'm Delacroix. I was warding my bit of the dorm against the ghosts while no one was here. Would you like to help? Their expression is entirely serious. Delacroix is either delusional or a prankster. I turn down their offer. Radio button, checked, 1 of 4. I'll go along with this for the ride. I believe in ghosts myself, so next, button, text, next, button. Delacroix shrugs elegantly. Some people don't have the attunement to such things, they say. They rummage through a black leather satchel at their feet and withdraw a bundle of herbs and a box of matches. While you watch, they strike the match, light the herbs, and quickly blow out the flame. There's a certain familiarity to their motions. They clearly have a great deal of experience doing this. Delacroix draws a deep breath, then, murmuring snatches of a language you do not recognize, paces anti-clockwise around the bed. Once, twice, 3 times. Once they have finished, Delacroix's shoulders look lighter, though they are still unsmiling. I run in a cult group here, they say abruptly. The Children of Hecate. It's for people with a connection to the other world. Maybe you should attend. It would open your eyes. It doesn't sound like my sort of thing. Radio button, checked, 1 of... Check. I like the idea of that. I wonder whether I could... Next, button. I'll probably look at the other activities, you say, and Delacroix looks bored. It's very selective, anyway, they say. Voices and footsteps echo up the stairwell, and the rest of your dorm mates troop in, chattering noisily. Do you mind? Delacroix says waspishly. It's hard enough to get some peace without all of you yelling in here. I tell the others off for disturbing them. Radio button. I speak seriously. I smooth things over. Radio button. Unchecked. 2 of 4. I speak mockingly. Next, button. Let's not get in a fight before we've even settled in, you say. Delacroix shrugs and climbs into bed, burrowing down under the blankets. I miss you, Delacroix, Max says cheerfully, and strides over to the bed next to them. He flings himself down, then makes a face. Ugh, I swear the springs are even worse here than in the Grace dorm. And that's saying something. Freddy and Gonzalez follow suit. Hardman comes in after them, and Blaze strides in last. Blaze's gaze falls upon your bed by the window. I am absolutely not sleeping by the door, she says. She gestures to the bed closest to the door, presumably the one she was assigned. I get far too cold. You, Layla, swap with me. This isn't worth arguing about. I graciously let Blaze take the bed. Radio button, checked, 1 of 5. I make a sarcastic comment about sharing. Radio button. I'm not budging. I was assigned. I let Blaze take the bed, but make it very clear that it's under duress. Radio button, unchecked. This is ridiculous. I call Blaze out on her nonsense. Next, button. Blaze, that's not fair. Gonzalez starts to protest, but you shrug. I don't mind, you say. Have the window bed, Blaze. Blaze looks taken aback, as though she'd expected more of a fight. Well, yes. All right. Silence stretches over the dorm. Freddy gives a nervous laugh, which breaks the tension. You settle down in your new bed, and sleep does not take long to come. Next chapter, button. Part 1, Winter Term, image, handwriting. Restraint in the face of frustration is a mark of true nobility. Losing one's dignity results in a swift cold shoulder from one's former peers. From the Philosophical Considerations of a Lady Francoise Renault. Next, button. Chapter 1, Class Rivalries, image, frame, It's odds awake in a room with 6 other people, and the sunlight is so bright through the delicate curtains that it's hard to stay asleep too long. Max tries, though, and Hardman eventually drags his blanket off to rouse him. Breakfast is a far less grand affair than yesterday, toast slathered with so much butter that it's soggy, sliced meat, and cheese that's very piquant for this time of day. You eat quickly, and hurry to your first class. Arts class, button. Everyone, even Max, arrives promptly to arts. It's in a large, airy room with wide, leaded windows overlooking the lake. Now that the storm has passed, the sunlight is bright and pale. I've heard Mr. Griffith is really knowledgeable, Freddy whispers to you. I heard that he... Mr. Griffith enters the room, and the class falls silent. He stands tall at the front desk, surveying your group with a serious expression that is not quite a frown. His dark blue suit is not flashy, but is clearly expensive. You're here to be refined, he says. Maybe you've attended here before, and maybe you're new. You may think you have no rough edges, but if you do, you're wrong. He snaps his fingers to Hartman, who hands out books. We're reading the Alessandro and Valentine balcony scene from Charles's The Husband. He says, I have seen it, and I love it. Radio button. I was dragged along to see it, but I didn't like it. Radio. It was banned at my school, but I read it anyway. I know the name. It's a comedy of romance, but not much else. Radio button. Next button. I know the name. I know the name. Next button. Flicking through the book reveals that it's a farce about a hero who falls in love with a married man, and the twists and turns they go through trying to get time together. Into pairs, please, Mr. Griffith says. You'll read it together. The rest of the students shuffle aimlessly, no one wanting to make the first move. You go to sit beside Hartman, radio button. Delacroix, Max, radio. Gonzalez, radio button. Unchecked. 4 of 6. Check. Freddy, radio. Blaze, radio. Next, button. Gonzalez looks up at you nervously as you sit beside her. I've barely even heard of this, she says, loudly enough that Mr. Griffith glances up with a frown. Gonzalez sinks down in her seat. You scan the scene. It involves Alessandro, the lovesick hero, climbing the trellis to reach Valentine, the married man. When he falls, he must gain the attention. I will play Alessandro. It's the more important role. Radio button. Checked. 1 of 4. Valentine is more psychologically. I will. Next, button. Gonzalez mutters her way through the lines for Valentine. In contrast to her ease on the train, she seems lost in this situation. When the murmur of conversation dips, Mr. Griffith beckons to you. Layla, Gonzalez, you will perform the scene for the rest of the group. Everyone stares as you walk to the front. I concentrate on pronunciation, even if it makes it less dramatic. Radio button. Checked. 1 of 4. I focus on putting on a dramatic show. Radio button. Unchecked. 2 of 4. Check. I use the scene to flirt with Next, button. Mr. Griffith glances up as you begin. Do you detect the shadow of a smile? You put all your effort into the show, and a burst of applause scatters around the room after Alessandro's main soliloquy. You progress through the scene, and Gonzalez stares at the floor, reading her side of the scene painfully quietly. A scattering of applause rings around the room. After you return to your seats, Mr. Griffith says, the arts are of prime importance in your social circles. Not only will you be required to make erudite conversation, you will also have the responsibility of providing patronage to artists. Freddy raises a hand. Excuse me, sir? Isn't it also important to be theoretically knowledgeable, to develop? Mr. Griffith's eyes narrow. Indeed, Freddy looks crushed. She puts down her hand and tucks a strand of auburn hair behind her ear. In the gap in the discussion, it's your turn to have your say. Learning should be its own reward, not just used for social climbing. Radio button. Checked. 1 of 4. Checked. Freddy needs to learn that some people find that sort. It's not. I'm not. Next, button. Don't you think, you say, that it's limiting to only read for the sake of impressing your dinner guests? Freddy shoots you a grateful glance. Gallatin is not about limitations, Layla, says Mr. Griffith, but about the proper application of learning for the greatest advantage. You'll understand that once you've been here a while. The bell rings, marking the end of the lesson. Next, button. Philosophy with Miss Dalkia is a very different affair. It takes place in her study, a snug room. Philosophy with Miss Dalkia is a very different affair. It takes place in her study, a snug room with a gently crackling fire burning, and 8 armchairs sitting in a circle. She hands out smoky-smelling cups of tea before you begin. Miss Dalkia herself is dressed in an emerald-colored dress just on the edge of too daring. Her lipstick is dark and immaculate, her voice is low. Philosophy is about building skills for facing the world, she says. Life is hard, but your cup of tea is scalding hot, and tastes as smoky as it smells. Miss Dalkia tells you to imagine the scene. A close friend is unhappy in their marriage, and by accident you discover that their spouse is sleeping with someone else. It's an age-old question, she says. Do you reach out? Yes. If they find out themselves, they'll feel like I made a fool out of them. Radio button. Absolutely. The cheating partner doesn't deserve my friend. Radio button. Check. No. It's not my place to poke my nose into the situation. Radio. Not directly, but I'd stage a situation where my friend. Next, button. Blaze snorts. It's probably far more complicated than you think it is, she says. It's none of your business. Hartman frowns. I don't think it would be right to stand by and watch without saying something. Hartman is sitting very straight, their satchel laid neatly on their knees. They raise a hand. Excuse me, Miss Dalkia? I thought we were due to do Weber's charitable endeavor this half term. Lady Reynolds didn't mention a syllabus change. Miss Dalkia lays down her cup with a gentle clink. Her nails, you notice, are lacquer deep plum. Max looks delighted, while Hartman's eyes widen. But, Hartman says, what about the exam? There's more to life than... I remind Hartman that it's... Surely the attitude doesn't matter. If the philanthropy... I encourage Miss Dalkia to go into more detail about her opinions. Radio button. Unchecked. 3. I'd rather concentrate on my own ambitions, not worry. We need to focus on the college syllabus, regardless of personal opinions. Radio button. Unchecked. Next, button. It's useful to keep with the college curriculum, you say. The exams are important, whatever other... Hartman gives you a grateful smile. The discussion continues, with Hartman shifting the focus to Weber's arguments about the duties of the upper class. The final class, button. During late afternoon, it's time for athletics with Mr. Blanchard. You change into your gym clothes and walk out to the field. Gonzalez, who barely spoke during philosophy, is bouncing up and down on her heels with excitement. Good afternoon, Mr. Blanchard says. Like the rest of you, he wears a polo shirt and sweater with one blast from the whistle, and you're off. This is dire. I don't even bother pretending otherwise. Radio button. I love this. I've been cool. This is dire. I don't even bother pretending otherwise. Radio button. I hold my head high and do my best not to look tired. Radio. Next, button. Almost as soon as you start, a stitch starts stabbing in your side. You trot at the back with Delacroix and Freddy, who are huffing and puffing beside you. The rest of the group speeds ahead. When you have the chance to glance at your companions, they have the look of intense, focused suffering. Around the sports field you go, and then through a gate to a copse. The path is knotted with tree roots, and mud splatters up your legs as you run. Freddy shrieks as a thin tree branch whips her across the arm. The run continues, circling around the woods, and after 2 circuits, Delacroix groans and flops to the ground beside a tree. They fumble in their pockets for a cigarette, and light it, leaning back against the tree. Their pale brown skin is flushed and patchy red. I go and tell Mr. Blanchard about Delacroix skipping out. Radio button. Check. I pause and encourage Delacroix to carry on running. Radio button. Unchecked. I stop and sit with Delacroix to take a break. Radio. I continue running to the bitter end. Radio button. Unchecked. Next button. You put your head down and continue running. Beside you, Freddy puffs and groans. At the field, Mr. Blanchard is waiting and does not look surprised that Delacroix is not among you. Muttering about collegiate spirit, he jogs into the trees and returns with a sulky Delacroix in tow. In the changing rooms, perfume and cologne are sprayed, water is splashed, and hair is brushed or unbraided. You return to normality. Your first day is over. 3 days later, button. Prep time is officially for homework, and the younger students are herded into prep rooms to work, but for students your age, it translates into a free hour after dinner and before bed. You can use it as you wish. How are you spending the time tonight? Socializing in the common room, walking around campus, radio, catching up on my homework, radio button, unchecked. Check. Reading in the common room, next button. In the Grace building, next to the library, is a prep room where people go to work. You find Freddy frantically scribbling, almost hidden behind a pile of books. There's so much to do, she says breathlessly. Obeying, you hurry to the library and get to work, writing a commentary about the relationship between Alessandro and Valentine in Act 1 of The Husband. Period. A cough from the doorway. Layla? I'd like a word. It's Blaze. Unlike every other time you've seen her, she looks uncertain. Come and walk by the lake, she says, and turns without checking if you agree. You fall. The lake is very still, but come and walk by the lake. The lake is very still, but catches the last glimmers of sunset on the water. Somewhere in the reeds, a heron croaks. Blaze fall. I wanted to apologize for my behavior, she says gruffly. I was inappropriate. I nod, and accept the apology unreservedly. Radio button, checked, 1 of 4. I don't believe this is genuine. I ask why she's been so unpleasant. Radio button. I pretend to accept the apology. Radio button, next button. Blaze's face lights up with her smile. You don't know how much that means, Layla, she says. I was assuming you were the same as your parents, but I know you are your own person. Can we start again? She holds out a hand. I shake her hand. I want to let this go. Radio button, checked, 1 of... Checked. I refuse to shake it, and I shake her hand, and keep hold of it. Radio. I hesitate a moment, then, next, button. Blaze nods, and her shoulders look straighter. You go on ahead, she says. I need the fresh air. Next, button. When you head into the dormitory, the rest of the students are settling in for bed. Hartman is carefully combing their mousy hair. Freddy is getting a final burst of reading done before lights out. Delacroix returns from the bathroom holding a toothbrush, rummages in their satchel and looks up with a frown. Max, have you seen my garnet necklace? Max gives a loud yawn. Only the last 1,000 times you've mentioned it. But if you're asking about just now, no. Delacroix's movements become more urgent as they turn out their bag, revealing a little bronze figurine of a bull, a bundle of dried flowers, and a paper bag whose acrid smell makes your nose wrinkle. I help them look. Radio button, checked. 1. I organize the others to turn over the dormitory. I get ready for bed. Delacroix will find it. Checked. Next button. Max rouses himself and starts rummaging under beds, giving a loud commentary about the dust as he goes. Hartman does the same, more quietly, and tells Delacroix that there's nothing to worry about. It belonged to my grandmother, Delacroix says, their voice rising and trembling. From the doorway, Blaze says, I'll call Mr. Griffith. What if it's been taken? Before Delacroix can answer, Blaze has whisked away. Next button. Mr. Griffith is the house tutor for Clemency Building, which means that he is on duty each night before lights out for emergencies or pastoral concerns. Despite it not being a lesson, he is still dressed in the formal suit he wears in the daytime. His only concession to the time of day is that he has shed his jacket, but his tie is as immaculate as usual. Delacroix's worried that their necklace has been stolen, Blaze says. Delacroix raises their head. That's not what I wondered if I should ask Carson if he'd seen an intruder on the grounds. Blaze carries on smoothly, but then I thought, you can never be too careful, can you? Mr. Griffith's expression is grave. Indeed you. Max puts an arm around Delacroix's shoulder and whispers something in their ear before picking up his satchel. Slowly, you file along while Mr. Griffith checks everyone's belongings. Cigarettes, really? He says to Max, and Hartman toots between their teeth as he confiscates them. The next bag is yours. As Mr. Griffith opens it, he frowns and pulls out a fine golden necklace whose chain is studded with garnets of deepest red. A cameo hangs from the chain bearing the image of a pale horse. Layla, he says, how did this get into your possession? Next button. Your palms prickle. I have no idea how it got there, you say. I was talking with Blaze. Blaze gives a performance of wide-eyed confusion. I'm sorry, Mr. She hefts her own satchel, stuffed with books, for effect. The lake, the walk, the apology. You should have known it. I refuse to allow any emotion to escape. I keep any reaction under wraps. Radio button, checked. I protest that this is a setup. Radio button, unchecked. 2 of 4. Checked. I say that I would never go against my own. I burst into tears, in the hope that it'll help my case. Radio button, unchecked. Next button. Why would I take Delacroix's necklace? You say. I've never even seen it before. Blaze has been against me from the start. Mr. Griffith hands the necklace to Delacroix. You'll have a meeting with Lady Rindle in the morning, he says to you with a disapproving frown. If she judges it necessary, you will need to hand in a letter of resignation. Expulsion is frowned upon at Gallatin College. It looks bad on their records. Far better if a student crafts a letter saying that they don't feel they fit in. Lights out in 2 minutes, says Mr. Griffith. You'll treat the situation with the gravity it deserves. Blaze looks triumphant. The rest of your dorm mates are quiet after he leaves, even Max. Delacroix glances at you nervously, winding the necklace around and around in their fingers, and you get ready for bed. The next morning, button. You wake. Straight away, you remember what happened yesterday. It's before dawn. I'm too anxious to sleep much. Radio button, checked, 1 of 4. I'm on time, but barely noticing anything around me. Next, button. The dormitory is subdued, and Hartman snaps at anyone who makes too much noise. Blaze, in contrast, looks fresh and energetic. You know you're innocent, and you're certain that Blaze was behind the theft. But to avoid expulsion, you need proof that you can present to Lady Reynolds. Before arts, I follow Blaze to eavesdrop on her. Radio button, checked. I'll talk to one of my dorm mates and ask. I'll confront Blaze now. Next, button. I'll confront Blaze now. Next, button. You find Blaze lounging on the grass outside the arts building with a cluster of friends who, you've got a lot of nerve, walking around as if you're not getting sent home this afternoon, she says. I'll be straightforward. Honestly, I take a step forward and speak very calmly. I'll pretend I have evidence against her. Radio, I allow my voice to crack. Why? Next, button. I allow my voice to crack. Why are you ruining my time here? Radio button, unchecked, 4 of 4. Check, next, button. Blaze, show stats. Blaze snorts. You don't understand much, do you? Look. I've been here since I was 12, and I'm not having some brat come and ruin my final year. You don't deserve to be here. But you lied to my face, you say. Blaze's jaw tightens with anger. She strides into the building, nearly colliding with Mr. Griffith in the corridor. Mr. As you walk to the head teacher's office, Blaze says nothing, but hums a jaunty tune under her breath. The wide bay window overlooks a sumptuous garden whose summer flowers are still blooming. Between the elegantly carved, at the desk sits Lady Reynolds herself, wearing a coral-colored dress and pearl earrings. Though she looks less glamorous than she did at the opening address, her gray hair is still meticulously shaped into a neat puff, and her make. Layla is trying to avoid trouble because she stole Delacroix's necklace, Blaze starts to say. Lady Reynolds waves a hand for silence. She leans forward on steepled fingers and fixes you with a dark, steely stare. I want to hear from Layla. Layla, you must understand that we operate on a system of trust and honor at Gallatin. If you don't adhere to it, you're not the right fit for this college. What do you? I pressure Blaze into confessing. Radio button, check. I catch Blaze's eye and just stare at her. Radio button. I feel awful about how this has gone, but it is still Blaze's fault. Radio button, unchecked. Check. Next, button. I don't have a problem with the honor system, you say. But I think Blaze Myrtle does. Blaze splutters and protests. Layla's being ridiculous. I mean, look at her parents. How can you expect some? Lady Reynolds turns her attention to Blaze. Very quietly, she says, you appear very invested in Layla's situation. Of course I am, Blaze says. I want the college to be the best it can be, Lady Reynolds, as much as you do. Lady Reynolds does not rise to the bait. That's the teacher's concern, Miss Marichal, not yours. Beneath her implacable stare, Blaze loses any appearance of strength she might have had. She just looks like the petulant adolescent that she is. Furious tears standing in her eyes, Blaze leaps to her feet. Layla needs to be gone. I was just showing everyone what would happen if she stayed. Silence, button. Silence, button. Lady Reynolds' dark gaze drops to Blaze's chair, and, trembling, Blaze sits back down. What exactly did you mean by that, Miss Marichal? The silence stretches out unbearably. Please don't punish Blaze too harshly. It was a mistake. Radio button. There. She admitted it herself. Radio button. Unchecked. What happens now? I won't be sent. There. She admitted it herself. Check. What happened? I wait for Lady Reynolds to next. Button. That will be all, Lady Reynolds says in freezing tones. Thank you, Layla. You are no longer under investigation. You may return to your class. While Blaze remains seated, you are dismissed. Whispers and gossip follow you around all day, but you see no sign of Blaze. When you return, I allow myself a small, private. Whispers and gossip follow you around all day, but you see no sign of Blaze. When you return to the dormitory that evening, Blaze's belongings are gone and her bed has been neatly made. I allow myself a small, private smile. Radio button, checked. What? My heart thumps. I wonder where she is. This wasn't what I wanted. Radio button. I feel a vast relief. I'm not going to be sent away. Whispers and gossip. I feel a vast relief. I'm not Next, button. Next. Hartman is very busy adjusting their bedsheets. It's not being expelled, they snap. I wish you would. She's been expelled. Show stats, button. She's been expelled, Max says wonderingly. We haven't had an expulsion since second year, when we were 12. Do you remember, Hartman, when that girl broke her locker with her cricket bat? Hartman is very busy adjusting their bedsheets. It's not being expelled, they snap. I wish you wouldn't make light of it that way. If Blaze has resigned, it's for her own good, and for the good of the college. Max mouths expelled at you, and whirls away to wash. It all feels like it happened so fast, and now Blaze is out of your hair. Maybe she deserved it, maybe she didn't. Blaze absolutely deserved it. She tried to do the same to me. I'm so happy not to have the bullying hanging over my head. I wish she meant her apology. I wish I could have gotten to know her properly. As friends, if students can be removed that quickly, I'll need to be careful. Radio button, unchecked, 5 of 5. Check, next, button. Your thoughts race around your head, only to be interrupted when Freddy trips over Gonzalez's lacrosse stick and starts telling her off for leaving her things around the dormitory. Whatever comes next, it's unlikely to be peaceful. Next chapter, button. A truly refined person behaves with moderation around one. Calendar, Wednesday, screen recording in progress, button.